Good evening, everybody. Love the energy in the room. We're going to get started.
We recognize Claire.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I've been given the high sign that we are good to start. I want to welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Berger, Williamson County resident. This is Democracy in Action, and I personally just want to say that it's exciting. I think it's humbling to see people who want to participate and engage with candidates. And what I love about Maryam and what she's doing is it's grassroots. So this is not retail politics. You're not watching commercials that are fancy, and she's throwing a lot of money at just slick lines for everybody. She's a real person. She's a mom. She's an advocate. Many of you have engaged with her and interacted with her on many different levels, and that's probably why you're here today. We want to thank everybody who's on Instagram Live checking us out. This will be on YouTube after the town hall. Just some, basic sort of, not rules, but really sort of, part of the discussion tonight is many of you submitted questions. So we want to thank you for that. And so we've been going through and prepping, looking at the questions and sort of pairing them together because there are a lot of themes that have come out in the correspondence from those that RSVP'd. So we're going to go through some of those. We will take your questions as well. We want this to be an open conversation. And ultimately, it's about you getting to know Maryam. And where she stands on positions that are important to you and your family. So with that, Maryam, if you're ready to get started.
Sure.
I think a great way to start this, as we have some people coming in, is to really sort of lay the foundation as to who you are. I don't want to take for granted that people know exactly who you are in your story. I've gotten to know you over the several months, and there's so many fantastic aspects of your story that I didn't know. And I think that they are important as people get to know what they're going to do when they go to the ballot box. So if you want to just sort of give an opening salvo on your background and why we're here today.
Before we do that, today's 9/11. So I was thinking we could take a short moment of silence for everything that happened on that day, everything that's happened and all the conflicts that are active right now, if everybody's okay with that. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's talk. He wants to know about me. So here we go. And you were so assured that I knew exactly who I was right now, which
I did.
Did I know I'd be running for Congress a year ago? No. So hi, first of all, I'm Maryam Abolfazli. I am the 5th Congressional District Democratic candidate running against the incumbent Andy Ogles. I am so honored to see you here. Thank you so much for coming out. Rod is exactly right. What we are doing here is trying to, put those building blocks of democracy back into our community and back into our district where we have a conversation. Should I ever become your congressperson, I want you to know we will continue doing this onward. Okay, so who am I? So I am a born and raised Nashvilleian and Tennessean. I am the daughter of 2 small business owners, first-generation immigrants who have contributed in a million ways to the community, to the family that I'm part of. And I'm a single mother of a 6-year-old. I will say, just in terms of my family, many of you know parts of my family or some of my family. We had one of us went to space a couple of weeks ago. Another one of us really helped steward the whole city and through COVID and on and on. We've got it's an honor to be part of this family. But I will say that my parents instilled in me 4 main things, and some of y'all have heard this, but the first is sacrifice. This race is a huge sacrifice. Bringing Tennessee back to its democratic principles, to fair competition, requires sacrifice right now. It is something they taught me that we do not just for ourselves individually, not even just for our families immediately, but for our broader family, our community as a whole. And they've done that throughout their lives. And I believe in sacrifice. I believe that's when we all do better. Secondly is hard work. There wasn't a night I didn't go to bed seeing my parents working very hard at their desks. The third is authenticity. I was raised an Iranian American in Nashville in the 80s, so I had to figure out very early on who I was and what my path would be. And finally is family values. I mean that in the traditional sense, and that family is, you know, what drives me, what I believe in. Coming back to family is very important, doing right by my family, being supported by them, supporting them. I also mean in that if it wasn't for my son, my 6-year-old, I'm not sure I'd be here before you today. He motivates me and gives me a level of courage that I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about, that I wouldn't have had without him. So family is very grounding and quite a reminder of what the larger purpose of all this is. Now I will tell you a little bit about my background. It's been a wild life. It's been a big life, and I'm blessed with everything that's happened. But I will say, you know, in 1997 at Hume Fogg, I was really clear that I wanted to bridge worlds. I felt myself as some sort of mediator or translator between different worlds, because that's what it was like growing up in Nashville. And so I wanted to do that. I felt I had an ability or something unique about that. So I went to college and I studied that, and I quickly got into economic development, because I realized that with rights and laws, they only go as far as you are financially able to support yourself. And so I got really consumed with development economically. And then I got a break. I got to go with the United Nations to Afghanistan when I was 24. This was after being in the London School of Economics, and I got to help the government there rebuild its irrigation infrastructure. And that was powerful. And something you need to know about me in terms of that story is I'm very much a nuts and bolts pragmatist. I would say that's my mom's side of me. I wanted, you know, clean water, roads, education, you know, Maslow's hierarchy type of stuff. Are we okay? Can we take care of ourselves? Basic things. So that I will always have my eye to that. So working on water infrastructure was very much speaking into that part of me. I worked with the World Bank, the American government, the British government, and on to secure a $75 million loan for that rebuilding after many, many years of war. I also gained an immense respect for our American military during that time. They were my friends. And they also taught me about what would become my respect for firearms and how I would approach them and view them later in life. Then I came back, went to Columbia, did public administration and economic policy management. Again, you see that sort of string of economic development in there, and then went into another exciting and incredible and challenging part of my career, which was to work in the Middle East and the former Soviet space, to help individuals and communities realize their goals. Sometimes when they were in what we call closed societies. So places where the governments didn't really want them to do that, and certainly didn't want them to work with outsiders to do that. And the way we did that is we took advantage of an innovation, which was, it was 2008, 2009. And at that point, people were online in a lot of these countries. And so we decided to leverage that and put the training schools online. So the first one we built, because again, you're gonna see this theme, was an entrepreneurship school for women. Again, meet them where they're at in their homes, let them go online when they want to and learn those skills that they want to learn to be able to realize their goals and their freedoms. Then it went to social entrepreneurs, disability advocates, street children, whatever it might be. And then it went to student leaders and teachers, civic education for teachers. And then as things were progressing, I got involved in the broader Middle East. I was in Tunisia during the revolutions. I was in Egypt during the revolution. This was known as the Arab Spring. And I engaged with doctors, teachers, students about democracy. So it was kind of this deep dive on democracy and civil society, and thinking very much about who we are as a country and how we do that. Even things like this, I would be talking to them about. And I learned a lot from them, and they learned a lot from me, and it was incredible. Fast forward, and I decided I wanted to raise my son here, and so I moved back home. Now, the whole time I'd been coming back and forth probably every 2 or 3 months because my family is very tight and very big. So I never felt very far away from Nashville, and it was exciting to finally get to come back. I just want to speak into this because I forget to tell people this sometimes. So much of the time I speak about my visions and my big, goals and the programs and strategies we developed for the world. But I want you to know in the back end, I was doing internal controls. I was doing financial management. I was doing budget projections. I was hiring and firing, HR. So that is something that came along with all this work. And then finally, I came here, worked at the city level at the Metro Human Relations Commission, working on anti-discrimination, at the state level with Awake Tennessee as the chair, working on domestic violence and then repro issues when Dobbs fell and our trigger ban came into effect. And then when I was doing all that is when the Covenant School tragedy happened. And I decided let's do a rally. Let's come together. Let's grieve together. Let's sing together. Turned out we needed to shout together, and that was powerful. A powerful moment for me. It was almost a spiritual moment for me, and it was definitely for our state, obviously. And that catapulted us into this incredible movement. And I started Rise and Shine. Again, always an eye to vision, while making sure sort of the details are being accounted for. So that's sort of what you should know about me. And in that work of, I don't know how many days, 50, 60, 100 days at the legislature, the inevitable conclusion was that I had to run for office. We were not being heard, so I just decided I needed to be the one doing the hearing. And that's how I ended up here. And I went to the federal level because I didn't see that our current representative was taking any of my concerns or the concerns I was seeing very seriously. And I felt that at the federal level, we may be able to make some pretty tough moves and strong moves quicker than we can possibly at the state level. So that's why we are here today. I'm sorry it was so long, but I wanted to say that. I also just want to quickly acknowledge, we do have, I think, 2 candidates here, because I'm talking about candidacy. Claire Jones, do you want to just stand up really quickly? I want to make sure we acknowledge her. She's running for state rep here. And then Lauren Andreessen, are you here? There she is. Yeah. She's also, yeah. I wanted to do that at the outset in case y'all had to slip away and if I missed anybody else. So that's the long story about me. Again, just to know, values, we've got to take care of the nuts and bolts of people's lives. I am good at being in between worlds. And I will always be thinking about the big vision and moving very steadily towards it while making sure sort of the back end is taken care of. And so I think those are the things we wanted to say out front.
No, I think that's a fantastic baseline for us to start. I do want a point of clarification before we go to some questions that were submitted. I'll speak for myself, but it seems like an inherent value that you have such international experience in representing our interest at the federal level. Can you talk about the value that you think that brings District 5 to have representation that has the experience?
Well, I mean, humans are humans everywhere, and believe it or not, yeah, that's it. That's the bottom line. So whenever I was going to Tunisia or I was going to Turkey or I was going wherever, I was sitting and I was listening to people and I was trying to download what they were going through and understand that, because in the end, I would also have to design the solution or the program or the concept that would hopefully help this. And so the only way to do that, like anything that you're approaching, is to really fully, deeply understand it. That's just part of who I am. And so I guess what I would say is that's kind of how I've run the campaign is, and we're going to talk about this, I hope, more, but is go and not assume that I know, not assume that I have walked in the shoes of the person that has come to talk to me, and then sit there and listen and take my ego out of it. There's such a desire to be right all the time in DC as well, very much so. But you do, my friend always says, do you want to be right or do you want to get it right? And I think that when you listen, you're trying to get it right. You're not trying to be right. And so I know that's not international, but that's sort of what I bring. Obviously, I mean, I know how to find things when you're lost. I have a great sense of navigation. I think I have decent instincts for danger and being in some tricky situations. I think I've mustered a lot of courage in my life and can use that. I think I've got decent gut instincts when it comes to people. And I think all those things would serve them.
I think it's a fantastic answer. I think that's, we have to have that in the people that represent us, because we all have unique needs and we then share a community together. I want to go to a question that we had from a high school student at Ravenwood. He was asking, what is your approach to economics going to be as a congressperson? Big question.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad this is first. Let's talk about this. So, growth has been great for District 5. Let's just say that. It is true. I've been in towns and in cities where no one has invested in them for decades. No companies have come there. No jobs have been created. Literally, there's been no investment. And you can tell, and it feels desolate and kind of sad. We have experienced the opposite of that. We are booming. We are happy. There's things to do all the time. It's exciting. And so I want to say that I acknowledge and love, and it's very important. I see my job as framing that growth, as structuring that growth so that it benefits all of us, so that our middle class, which is the backbone of the Nashville and the district that I know, continues to be important and meaningful here. And so when we think about that, I think about, how do we incentivize, in the same way that we incentivize companies to come here, how do we incentivize communities and individuals to do well for themselves? I believe that people want to be believed in. I believe that people want to be trusted, and I believe that people want to do well for themselves. And so how do we make that happen? And I think there's a lot of empirical evidence that if you invest in folks, they invest in their communities. Subsistence economies don't do well. If people are just getting by, the communities around those don't do well. So what does that mean? Let me give you a concrete example. Housing. Obviously, we don't have enough of that here, and that's really the issue. There's not enough supply. So figuring out how to increase that supply, right? And there's a lot of different ideas on that, looking at how private equity is gobbling up that supply and short-term rentals and things like that, but also incentivizing home ownership. There are, again, more studies that show when you own your home, you invest in your community, you start that business, you care about the education down the street, you care about the relationships your kids are in, you care about your neighbors. It's good for us. So incentivizing that. The other day I was talking about young people need help buying their first home. Well, guess what? This woman was 70, said, I need help buying my first home. Yeah, no kidding. So I think that would be really, really important. We also, need to think about a big, big thing, y'all. I'm just going to slow down here. A really big thing that I see needs to get done that is not getting done is bringing that federal money down to our district. Even existing federal money. I'm not talking about going up there and passing a new bill for resources. I'm talking about existing money that needs to come down here. I'll give you an example. Infrastructure, right? We have the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're going to get $2 billion from that. I looked at it though. There's additional grants and monies for that, right? When I think about the other day, I was at the UAW retirees meeting, and someone was telling me from Chapel Hill, great town, by the way. They are going to have a town hall. They're going to talk about changing an area into commercial. I'll get there, I promise. Commercial to get to tax and to get more taxes to fund wastewater management. Or we could get federal money to do that. I'm not saying that's always the answer, and I don't know if that's the particular answer for this one, but I find that a lot of time we go to taxing locally or incentives with developers, and we don't think about the money we've already paid into that we're not bringing down. In some ways, it's double taxation. I'm going to say that again, double taxation. That's happening. So if I was a rep that was really interested and curious about this, I could be talking to Chapel Hill. I could be talking to the city level here. I could be talking to the state level and say, hey, this just got passed. It's got $3 billion and it's got these additional grants. Let's talk about what y'all need. I know that reps typically even ask for a wish list from local towns and local cities and work on that. Now that's where appropriations come in. I could be knocking on that door of that appropriations committee day in and day out, and you better believe I would love to do that. Now, I would be a freshman, so you're not really well respected, but I would go and I would like make them know that we need X, Y, and Z. Duck River comes up, but there's a lot of other things that come up, right? Potholes in 440. I think I've lost five tires to those potholes. I'm not kidding. So that's a big one that I want to talk about that would really free up our resources and make us think differently about using taxes for stuff that we could actually use resources that we've already paid into. I can go in that forever. There's the Bipartisan Safer Community Act. I looked at mental health supports. There's money there for our schools and for community centers. What if there was somebody that was actively talking to our state reps and our cities about this? I know that our current rep does not do this at the city level. I confirmed that with the city. And he is the only one. So that's another thing when it comes to the economy. The third thing, obviously, we need to talk about the big pink elephant in the room is inflation. So I'll just talk about that now. Inflation is tough. So what has been going on? Sorry to get nerdy again. Sorry you came to this. But basically, prior to COVID, typically, cost of labor was something like 50-60% of a good. You had cost of the goods that go into it, 30%, and then profit was 10 to 20%. During COVID, because the supply chain, they had to up the prices. And then after COVID, what you see is the cost of labor goes down to 10 to 20%. Cost of goods is like 35%. Profit margins go to 50%. Yeah, look. We're Americans. We believe that people should make good money for what they're doing. Yes, I don't know if I want to judge or comment on a 50% profit margin. What I do want to talk about is who is that harming? As a single mother going to the grocery store, I don't know how many times I've had to figure out what I'm buying from this grocery store and what I'm buying from that grocery store and what am I just to make my budget work. And that is where we're all feeling it. So another story. I was talking to a small cattle farmer in Murray County the other day, small farm, and he was telling me he can't name the price for his cattle. So the purchaser names that price. That price that he sells it at does not cover his costs. Then it's upcharged to another buyer, corporation, and then the grocery store, and it ends up being a $17 or $20 piece of steak for you and me. Very expensive in my mind. That has gone up significantly. We need to look at how that's happening. That's all I'm saying. Why and how that's happening, and what can we do about it? If we incentivize companies with low rents, with low, with tax incentives, is there a way to disincentivize that kind of behavior so our prices get a little bit back to normal if it's just funding a large margin? So that's what I'll say about inflation. I can go on childcare. There's a lot. Again, federal is often about resources and regulations. I think there's stuff we can do for resources for childcare, both from workforce development. Childcare workers have a rough job. They need training, they need funding, they need support, and then also from the actual childcare centers. There's a ton of programs for that. Did I cover everything, y'all? There's so much more we can say. But that's generally how I approach it. How can we incentivize? How can we think about making sure growth is happening, but everybody's doing well?
Okay, we're going to take a left turn, but
yes,
this is
sorry.
a very
I don't want to put you all to
timely topic.
Yes.
Puya, who is a researcher at Vanderbilt Medical Center, wants to know your position and stance on the U.S. sending money and arms to Israel.
Okay. Okay. What to know about me on this one? Obviously, I've spent a lot of time in the region. I've been to Israel. I get it. This is layered upon layered upon layered. I would say in my career, I've not seen something more difficult than this issue right now. I will say the hostages should have been back and the ceasefire should have happened. That's what I'll say. I work towards peace. You should know that about me. I will work towards peace. I don't find that military solutions often achieve the intentions or outcomes that they want to. So that's the story. And with aid, like with Ukraine and like with any other partner, I want to know what it's being used for. Did it get used that way? And hold that accountability and that transparency. That's that. That's what you should know about me in that conflict.
I think we should open it up to the audience for a couple of questions, and then we can get back to the ones that were submitted. If you've got a question, if you want to raise your hand, and I can come over to you and just state your first name, if you will, and what city you reside in.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I live in Wilson County, not Juliet. As a former public librarian and current public school mom, I'm very concerned about the attacks on our public education system, specifically the hate and the threats that our teachers and librarians are seeing. Very personal to me. I think that groups like Moms for Liberty and the Heritage Foundation are working to erode the public trust that our country has in these institutions and making teachers and librarians not feel safe to do their jobs anymore. So when you're elected, what will you do on a federal level to support public education, specifically protecting our teachers and librarians from this hateful rhetoric and harmful legislation that's being pushed?
Excellent question, thank you. Last night I was watching a debate with my son who's 6. And he said to me, he watched a little bit before he passed out. He said to me, "Why is that guy being so mean?" And we've got to stop being so mean. And mean has to stop meaning authentic. Somehow mean has started to mean authentic. So like a CEO sets the tone for a company, I think public leaders set the tone for a country. Another story, I was in, I guess I was back in Chapel Hill. I put 20,000 miles on my car since November, y'all. So I've been a lot of places. So I guess I was back in Chapel Hill. A woman came to talk to me and she said, I'm a Democrat, but I hear this a lot, but I'm sort of scared to talk about it with my friends, my family, whatever. And I definitely won't say it at church because church people can be so mean. When I was growing up, that's not how we thought of church people. So something has happened where this has just become mainstream. Just being mean is being true, being honest. Also, someone else shared this morning that as they were coming out in their neighborhood, people were being mean about the debate last night and talking down to one or two, whatever. We got to stop doing this. This has got to stop because the kids are watching. And so being mean doesn't start with them online and in social media. It starts with us, and it starts with the leaders that are getting all the airtime on all sides. So that's my biggest thinking about this is, as a person, I think in this environment, we can be baited into being mean, right? We can be like pulled into being mean. And I can be like, I'm authentic, more or less, trying my hardest to be me, and I'm not being mean. So that's what I commit to first and foremost. I want to bring it back to be respectful, honorable leaders again. The second thing is, protections at the federal level is tricky, right? So a lot of this is handled by the school board and local level, and it's hard to know what the difference between all that stuff is. But, there are ways to think about legislation. It seems like it's hitting that point where we do protect our teachers and we do protect our librarians. Obviously, there's Title VI protections and things like that, but really doing something even more specific that says, as leaders, as the House of Representatives, we're not okay with this, which would hopefully mean that people could be more careful. Of course, there's First Amendment rights, and you've got to be careful about that. But overall, I think really it's about all of us deciding together that this is not who we are as Americans. full stop.
And just to follow up on that, to your question, which is a great question, would be your position just on the Department of Education at the federal level, because that's drawing a lot of ire from people, as that the threat is there to take it away. And then to prevent even money coming in from the federal level to the state of Tennessee, which our speaker has said is sort of on the table, which goes to your position of protecting teachers and librarians from the onslaught of sort of the extreme position.
So I was in the legislature in November when they did these education task force meetings. They were kind of hidden and quiet. Nobody really knew what they were. And we were like, we're going to go to this. And there weren't a ton of us in the room, and we sat through it for 2 weeks. And it was all just very cryptic. Like, what is this about? What are they trying to do? Well, it turns out it was Project 2025 in Nashville 2023. And what it was rejection of federal education funding. And what that's about is not just the money, which is obviously really important, and it's a lot of money that we rely on from the federal level, but it's also about the civil protections. There are a lot of civil protections that come through the funding. And ultimately, when they kept on saying the strings attached, it was those strings that they're talking about. It's about IDEA, which is disability funding for students with disabilities. It's about funding for ESL students. It's about all the anti-discrimination titles that have been key since 1964 in this country. And so that's what they were essentially proclaiming when they said they wanted to get rid of it. And then obviously they want to put vouchers in place and then allow folks to choose, which again, that is controversial as well, because what are you choosing and with what money? And so, yeah, we would have to fight that, I think, in Congress, specifically depending on who becomes president. That would be a major fight, and one that I would be seriously up for, because I also testified against the vouchers in the legislature when it came down to that final hour. So this is something that's near and dear to me. A Department of Education is very important. It is integral to the democracy of this country. It was built that way, and we've got to fight for it.
Let's take another question from the audience.
We've got more submitted.
We have over here. Yes, sir.
Hi.
Womack, I'm a Nashville native, gun owning,
Good to see you.
smallest child's trans, small business owner in Nashville. I grew up here. Lived in Franklin for 16 years. Had the pleasure of getting to know Andy the Ogre when he was low for licking for My question's threefold.
Yeah.
When I left Franklin and moved back here to Nippers Corner, I thought, well, great, I can vote for someone who might actually represent the federal Congress. And then my state decided to gerrymander the absolute crap out of Nashville. I don't even know what the shape, an amoeba. Let's just say it looks like an amoeba now in Middle Tennessee. First part of the question is, why has there not been a lawsuit for the gerrymandering in Tennessee? That's the first one. Can we do that? Because it should never happen, but it's happening now. Second fold, the DNC national apparatus has left us here by ourselves. They have for years. They've given up on us. We see it all the time. All the focus is on national swing states. But in Tennessee, this is the third part of the question, how do we activate the vote? Because if more people voted, we would win these elections. But we can't get people to vote because they're scared. We don't have funding for the candidates because the national apparatus has left us alone. And our local politicians have gerrymandered us to a point where they've locked us in a box, from my perspective, illegally. So on those 3 points, what can we do collectively? Again, it's a gun-owning, Nashville native, boot-wearing, small business owning, oldest kid is trans, just straight-up American Tennessean. How can we fix those 3 problems to help you be my representative to the federal Congress?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope somebody recorded that. That was beautiful. You are so Tennessee to me. You know when
Marge did her last town hall 7.5 years ago at Fairview. I was there. She was my rep, and I've never seen her get madder with the question asked. so they need to make a cutout, and Gloria needs to. They need to do a debate and do a cutout.
Right. It looks like they're on their way to that. No. just to say you're so Tennessee to me, whenever you're in New York or DC or whatever, you're from Tennessee? And it's like, yes, I'm from Tennessee. I'm very Tennessean, and so are you, you know what I mean? And we are complex and nuanced humans, and I love it. I love it so much. And that's what this campaign's about, right? It's not dominated by one persona or one prototypical human being. We are all Tennesseans, and it's layered upon layered, and it can be whatever it is. And we all love it here. So lots of big questions over there, Josh. So let's see. Gerrymandering. Is there a lawsuit? I feel like there was. My sister's a lawyer. You probably know better. There was one. It's still in the courts, probably. Got shot down. Thank you. Courts are courts these days. So yeah, I don't know if that's the way. I'll tell you my solution. The second one was, what was the second one? The DNC. Okay, God bless them. The DNC. I'm going to answer all three of these with my one answer, okay, which is basically about my campaign. I am running in District 5, and my name is Maryam Abolfazli. And the hypothesis and the approach of this campaign is that gerrymandering be damned. We are humans, and we are all fed up in one way or another. And if someone is interested in understanding and listening to how we are all fed up in all of our unique ways with our boots and our guns and our liberal beliefs or whatever it is, that will solve this issue. Now, what I mean by that, and this gets a little deeper, but we have been neglected by everybody, by both sides, for I'd say at least 10 years. I don't think, when we when we go door knocking in Spring Hill, no one's been touching those doors forever. When we do a town hall in Brentwood, no one's done that at the federal level forever. When I'm talking to that cattle farmer in Murray County, no one's talked to him ever about what's hard about his business. These people, we have been neglected. I've been neglected, you've been neglected, but so has the rural areas and the suburban areas and the urban areas when it comes to this. And so what we're trying to do here is talk to each other and offer representation for the first time in a long time, especially in the gerrymandered parts, especially there. Because sure, Nashville's been represented pretty decently until 2022, but the rural and suburban areas, I would argue no. I will say I don't know that my opponent has spent a moment campaigning. So these people so what we're trying to do, and we'll see, is instead of saying, oh, it's not blue and we're not represented, is to say, is anybody represented? And can we change that? Because my answer is like, no, these people are not. If I'm the only person that's talked to them in 10 years, they definitely are not. And so that's the solution I'm providing in the interim. Sure, there could be lawsuits. Hopefully there will be. DNC, they're busy. They're busy. That's all I'll say about it. I mean, it's fine. Also, like, who knows how to win in District 5 but District 5? I almost am like, I'm glad they're not in this race, because they probably would bring some people down and be like, you need a message like this. And I was like, what are you talking about, So nobody can, District 5 is going to save District 5. That's my answer. And finally, money-wise, we have as much money as we need. We have as much money as we need. If y'all give $5 tonight, we'll have a little bit more. Okay, Alexis is telling me to, she says we need a little bit more. Okay, sorry. My campaign team is saying we need a little bit more. But I'm just saying, does money equal votes? No. He had a primary opponent that spent $1 million on ads. He's still in the race. So what I believe is that voters vote. So I'm trying to talk to voters. And I'm trying to listen to voters. I'm not actually telling them, I'm hearing from them. That's the approach. We'll see how it goes. But that's the cure to gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is not aliens are over here and whatever subhumans over here. We're all the kind of same people, and we just need to. And the weird thing about me is I actually love the rural areas. I love the suburban. My dad, I got to say this one last story. So Dad lived with a kind of a surrogate family in Peoria, Illinois, when he moved over here in 1963. World War II veteran. When he passed away in Peoria, Illinois, when he passed away, on the tombstone is my father's name as his fourth son. And we would go to Thanksgiving there, and I think Christmas once, and I remember that home. I'm nostalgic for that home. It is a time and a place and a feeling that it's hard to get now. I felt that again in the cattle farmer's kitchen. His wife has memorabilia. And I just want to say, that's coming from me. You're a boot wearer, and I love rural America. And I love urban America. I'm an urban woman. I lived in DC. So these layers mean that gerrymandering may not be as big of a deal as everybody makes it out to be. That's what I'm saying. I'm done. Thank you.
Let's talk about seniors in our community. Richard and Brentwood submitted a number of questions related to the senior population and issues that have the potential to negatively impact their way of life.
Can you say that again? I was watching my father leave.
You So Richard and Brentwood submitted a number of questions around seniors in our community, and wanting to know sort of your position on making sure that they are not the forgotten constituents in and among our community. So there are a number of things we can go into with this, but just your general perspective on seniors within District 5.
So I refer to my family all the time. My father is 80, my mother is 70. They are seniors. We rely on Social Security and Medicare that they worked their tails off, contributing to their whole lives. I cannot, in good conscience, get rid of that. So we got to find a way to fund that. Now, as I did research in this, when these programs were created, the lifespan was 67. And it started at 65. And now the lifespan, thank God, is a lot longer because of technology and whatnot. And so we have an aging population that is growing. And it costs us a lot of money. I saw that it's over 30% of our deficit. It goes to these services. But again, in good conscience, I cannot cut those. So we've got to find a way around that. We got to find a way through that. And as I was talking to one Republican, businessman, he said, I guess it's some combination of raising taxes and cutting costs, and similar to a home budget, it would be the same. So that's what I'll say about maintaining those. That's important to me.
Beth from Brentwood went even further, wanting some more detail just on supporting grandparents that are raising their grandchildren, and ways in which we can find economic supports to provide a sustainable opportunity for them and their grandchildren.
I mean, it makes sense to me. A lot of families rely on their grandparents for childcare. A lot. It's also been insinuated as a policy solution. So, if it's a policy solution, thank you, grandparents. Then yeah, and a lot of them, like I said, are living off meager checks of Social Security and Medicare. So, and working really hard as child caretakers. So yeah, I would be completely open again. Again, thinking about return on investment, thinking about incentivizing things that work for our economy. It works that parents work. It works that both people work. We need that. So how do we incentivize that and make sure that that continues to grow our economy? We've got to think about it in these terms.
Let's talk about gun reform. Katie, a teacher in Franklin, wants to know specific policies that you would support to reduce gun violence.
Okay. First, I just want to share, I know a lot of people know me as just this, like I literally became an activist a year ago. I was doing all this other stuff before that, but I will say how this all started for me is January of 2023, my son Auden has a fever, he's sick, I think he has strep, it's 12 o'clock at night, and I hear pop, 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 pop. And I know that sound, not that well, but I know it to be like, and I go to the window, and sure enough, there's a group of men, young men, running through my parking lot with guns. And I'm standing there, a single mom by myself in the home, and being faced with this for the first time in that way. And eventually the police come, and eventually it gets handled. After that, my car, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, has been rummaged through 3 times in my neighborhood. Several times there was money in there that they did not take. They're looking for guns. So this is personal. It's personal for all of us. After Covenant, it got very personal for many people who felt that maybe they were protected from this, and we realized no one is. It's personal for all the Black and brown children that have been affected by gun violence for a very, very long time. It's personal for the victims of suicide, who is largely like a 50-year-old age group of white men in Tennessee are the highest suicide group. It's personal everywhere. We are a state of responsible gun owners. We generally know how to handle our guns. When I read those 20,000 comments that were submitted to Bill Lee for the special session, majority were gun owners and majority were begging, pleading grandparents, neighbors, aunts, parents for something to be done. I think people would be comfortable with background checks. I think responsible gun owners would be comfortable with background checks. I think responsible gun owners would be comfortable with safe storage. I think those are 2 steps that statistics show would increase, our safety significantly, kind of off the bat. We can talk about magazine capacities and assault rifles down the road, but just some basic incremental stuff would be huge and wouldn't harm our state's practice of gun ownership. Yeah, so that's what I'll say.
24-hour wait?
Yeah, sure. I would go further. I mean, what's the urgency? If you need to go to the shooting range, you can wait 3 days or 5 days. So yeah, that's a great one. There's other ones that I've looked at. We used to have that gun manufacturers had shared liability. They had liability up until 2003. That was a law. Can you imagine what that does if the gun manufacturer has some shared liability in that? Imagine the technology. We have a lot of accidental shootings at home. Imagine if the trigger was impacted by that and it could only go to the owner. I will also just say, I would just ask, because we're coming off of some awful incidents, let's all just do good with safe storage at home. Until I can get to Congress and until we can pass something, let's just store our guns. I know everybody's raising their kids to be responsible gun owners, and I trust that, but let's just take that extra step. They don't have developed frontal lobes, y'all. They don't have executive functioning, no matter how much we train them on whatever. And those are lethal weapons. And that's my request from a community standpoint. We can do a lot as a community. This goes back to investing in each other and our communities.
So the message I'm hearing from you is that how many people met you through your advocacy, that's not going to go away when you win the election, that you will still continue to represent safe gun laws and all that you're representing, because it feels like it's falling on deaf ears, especially across the state.
Yeah, you can count on me to support, push responsible gun ownership. If there are not existing bills, which there are, I will happily introduce them. I will hit the ground running as much as you can. It's T-minus 2 years once you get there, y'all. It's not a lot of time. By the time you figure out what you're doing, it's over. So yes, I will immediately kind of hit the ground running with that.
And I think this is where we have a couple of questions that were very similar from Ellen in Bellevue and Josh from Nashville, but this goes back to your international experience and looking at everybody for their individual needs, desires, their representations in getting outside the Democratic bubble. Right, you talked about going to different parts of District 5 that have probably not had their doors knocked on in a decade.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your experience through the campaign, in the conversations that you're having, that I would garner to say most of us probably haven't had because we're so divided that we're not talking with people that maybe have different views than ours, unless we run into them in the grocery store, at a gas station, someone's wearing a shirt that upsets us, or something happens, right? Talk a little bit about your experience on the campaign trail, because I know this is near and dear to you to have these conversations with people that may be unlikely bedfellows in that regard, in topics that you may not share the same opinion.
I feel like I answered this question. If you want me to do it again.
I do.
Okay. There is something I think that has to be done as a public leader. There's a few things. One is representation. I think we've forgotten about representation. I was talking to a friend who was like, I don't even consider that public leaders are meant to represent everybody, which is wild to me. Obviously, you cannot represent all interest and all POVs, but I certainly can know what they are. Because sometimes I don't know what the opposing viewpoint is. Sometimes I live in a bubble and I don't understand it. I will tell you, I know I've talked about this already. Many conversations have really enlightened me. Again, when I was talking to Pat on his farm, and he was talking to me about how much he's struggling, and he kept saying, I don't have the answers, and I don't envy anyone like you in that position who's trying to come up with the answers. I mean, very humble about, yes, I'm struggling. Yes, I want you to fix it, but I also don't know what the solution is, and I know that it's hard. And so as we sat in his kitchen table, that was the exchange that was happening that was so meaningful for me, is he was open to not knowing, and I was open to not knowing, and we were going to try to learn from each other. And I learned a lot from Pat. I did, about inflation, about prices, about profits, about what he's going through and what he's not comfortable with and what he is comfortable with. So I want to keep doing that. I grow from that. I feel that it heals the immense misinformation that we have about each other. I cannot tell you how many lies there are about each other. I've talked about this before, but one man I was on the phone with, he said, I'll never vote Democrat. I'm sorry. I don't like your opponent, but I'll never vote Democrat. I said, okay, well, let's talk about that. What is it? He's like, I don't want to take from people that are working hard and give to people that are not. And I said, well, you know, I'm a Democrat, but I worked my tail off, and my parents worked really hard, and that's just a big part of our value system. He said, well, you're not a Democrat, you're a Republican. I thought, oh, you know, some days I am like, whew, we got a lot of work to do. I do, but I'm willing to do it. And I'm willing to do it through relationships, and I'm willing to do it through conversation. At the same time, you got to have a backbone, you got to have a spine, and you got to put your foot down when things are wrong and when things are against those values. And that is a difficult thing. That's why I say I love being a Southern Democrat. I love being a Tennessee Democrat. I feel like Tennessee Democrats, that's why we don't need the DNC, Josh, because we kind of know this thing, this dance of like being open, listening, understanding another perspective, using it to bring something forward, and saying, that's mean, that's hurtful, you are excluding people. And being able to do both. And I'm glad that I'm a mother, and I know how to have that strong spine. I'm glad that I'm 45 and not 25. I'm glad that I've had the life experiences I had that allow me to be open enough to hear, and at the same time be like, okay, at this point on this vote, I'm going with this, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Now, we have a number of topics, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Was there anything that we've missed? Was there a question out here? We've got a question over here in the corner.
Microphone, but
All right.
I would love to hear your take and perspective on women's health care.
Okay.
And something that I think is at least really important to me, and I know some others in the room. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't think it's safe to be pregnant in Tennessee right now. I think if I was pregnant here, I would be worried. Thankfully, we have incredible practitioners like Dr. Anderson who take on an immense burden. I could cry because I know what she's been through. I know what Dobbs meant to her work. I know the criminal lawyer she had to bring on. I know that practicing her basic job turned into this high risk, high stake thing that she never signed up for. And nobody did. And that tells you why we have a 20% drop in OBGYN applications in this state. And what does that mean, y'all? If we don't have residents coming here, then we don't have doctors coming here. And I don't want to see what Tennessee's like in 10 years' time, because we already lost our rural hospitals because in our stubbornness, we did not expand Medicaid. And in our stubbornness, we're doing this. We're playing politics with our lives. It is terrifying. So I will say, one grandmother said, my daughter is pregnant right now in Tennessee, and I text her every morning. I say, is everything okay? That's just wrong. There's a million things to worry about when you're pregnant. Whether you're going to get the care you need if something goes wrong is just not one of them, should not be one of them. So at the federal level, there's a lot of talk. Obviously, if there is a bill that can be brought to provide, to ensure that women have that access, that everyone that is pregnant has that access, I will fully support that. Becoming mother was the most incredible thing that ever happened to me. Everything, but it was my choice. It was my choice. And that's really important. It has everything to do with the mother I am and could be. And I think that that's really important. And I'm grateful to all the doctors and all the advocates and everyone that's working very hard to make sure that women are okay right now in this state, and all the nurses. I have had doctors reach out to me. We're even wasting money on this right now. People are doing double and triple ultrasounds so that they don't get legally in trouble. It's awful. So yeah, I hope that answers. But yeah, I will be a voter for all kinds of protections and support for that access.
Maryam, let's put a a bow on this conversation. Okay. I want to leave you sort of an open end, sort of conclusion here based on the engagement here. I think it'd be great for people to know how they can continue to support and have the conversations. I know you do things on Thursdays and Sundays. This is fantastic, this turnout. I mean, this is what it's about. Josh, when you're talking about it, these are the conversations to have at the soccer field, at the grocery store. Let people know that we exist. And I think, Maryam, you're doing a great job of communicating that out to the community in a way that's inclusive. It's not exclusive. So talk a little bit about how these people can continue to participate even beyond tonight.
Yeah, I got a Facebook message today that was like, are you ever going to start campaigning? And I was like, do I respond? And I was like, you got to respond. So I was like, I do it 12 to 16 hours a day, but he's like, are you just doing this so there's somebody else on the ballot? And I was like, dear Lord, no. To be clear, y'all, this is not a vanity run, okay? This is not just so that we have someone on the ballot. Alex says 5 minutes. It is to win. We're going to win, okay? Yes. We're going to win. Yes. Yes.